Thanks for stopping by. This is going to be the first roundtable of the week. Topic for discussion today is wearables. I'm going to bring up the panelists first of all, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the marketplace. So our first guest is Joan Vrtis. Joan is the CTO from Multek, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Flextronics, very much seen as the wearables guys. So Joan, come and join me. My next guest is Tom Foley. Tom is from ASM. Come and join us, Tom. Tom covers more of the placement side, and our next guest, Schake, covers the print side for ASM. Thanks very much, guys. I was at CES at the beginning of January, and again at a wearables technology event in Munich a couple of weeks later, and wearables really does seem to be getting a lot of buzz in the market. It's been doing that for a while, but a lot of people feel that 2015 is really the year for wearables. For me, it kind of goes into a couple of categories. There are a few things that are consumer electronic devices that we wear on our bodies or on wrist straps that have pretty much the standard challenges. But there are a lot of products that bring new challenges to the market, and that's really what we want to explore here today. I want to start by setting the scene and trying to understand what are the key challenges from the wearables market and where that's going to take us in terms of how we assemble those, how we build those, and the kind of demands it's going to make on the equipment we use to that. I'm going to start with Joan, who has a huge amount of experience in this area, running the Interconnect Technology Center, Chief Technology Officer for Multek, and making a lot of these wearables. Tell me where you see the key challenges in the marketplace.
So one of the things that we've seen is more on the miniaturization standpoint, and I have a few things on my wrist that kind of highlight some of the things you've probably seen when you've gone through the stores. But what's really been interesting to us, it now goes around your wrist, it now goes on the body, and for us, they want the same functionality that you have in your cell phone now in something that's wearable. And so it makes it very much a challenge for us to figure out how are we going to do this from a design standpoint, from the material selection, from the power that you're going to use, and then all the equipment that has to be in the background putting all these things together so you can get something like this and you can put it on your wrist and you can see how it's, your health might be advancing with time.
Okay, so we're seeing miniaturization, there's a mixture of heterogeneous devices, but flexibility is a big part of it.
Flexibility is a huge part of this. One of the things that's been interesting, I always have samples with me, and one of the things that's been really interesting for us, this is a rigid flex. I know this is a camera, but you guys can always come and see this afterwards. This is a rigid flex system. Flexible has really been key in promoting the wearable market, because now not only do you get something that's flat that you normally see when you do the processing, but this whole thing now has to go around inside this wearable in order to work. And in the past, when we had these type of things, when they were just flat, we didn't have to worry about a lot of movement. But now we have to look at how these things move and twist and make sure that we can have all the materials to be robust around this, as well as the assembly process of this, because once you start moving it, you have different components on here and you can easily pop them off. So there's a lot of things that we have to do when we do designs and we work on the manufacturability of this so it has the longevity in the market.
Yeah. And Tom, from your point of view, I'll come to you in a minute, Jeff. From your point of view, what are you seeing in the marketplace? What demands are people making on you from the wearables market?
From the wearables market, from a placement machine standpoint, it's very much along the lines of what Joan has just mentioned. High density, small component placement. It's something that we've been doing now for quite some time with smartphone manufacturing, but now the form factor gets even smaller in some cases with watches, smartwatches, the fitness bands that Joan is showing as well. So you really have to, when these factories get smaller and smaller, you got to really build it right the first time. Some of these components are so small that they're not even reworkable. Yeah. So you got to build it, set the process up so it builds it all right the first time. So that's
So that reliability is key as well. We don't just want a product that has that functionality. It's got to be reliable. What are you seeing out there when you're talking to people? What are they challenging you in terms of the print process?
Well, it's a very good example that you show us, a good illustration of the challenge there, because it's so flexible and flimsy. That wouldn't be the format that you're introducing then into the printer. It's going to be ganged up in some sort of a more rigid panel, but you do see that it's very flexible. And probably even in that panelized format, it's going to be flexible. And in the printer, it absolutely has to be flat. It has to be stationary. If there's any sort of deviation in any axis, X, Y, Z, in the print process, you're going to have a defective print result. So we've got to keep that absolutely as rigid of a structure as possible, which is exactly the opposite of what it is in its final form on your wrist, say, in that instance. So we got to make sure that it's fixtured properly in the machine so that it stays absolutely stationary in the print cycle. And we have fixturing tools to assist us to achieve that. Now, we have to smartly design the stencil, obviously. You don't want to overprint those pads because you're using every bit of the real estate in those little coupons. And you go outside of the boundaries there, and you're not going to gasket the stencil aperture. So you probably want to undersize your apertures a little bit with respect to the pad. That will have a detrimental effect on your area ratio. So you're not going to get the paste out of those apertures. And we have a very neat solution for that from a printing, one of our products being the proactive squeegee, which is it's an ultrasonically powered squeegee blade. And that's going to help get the paste in and out of those very small apertures, low area ratio challenges. So give you a little perspective on
So what I'm kind of curious about, guys, is you've both been seen very much as technology leaders in these particular marketplaces yourself. What do you think you've been able to add as a benefit of actually being able to come together? Is this a technology where you've been able to leverage the relationship between DEC and C-Place and actually offer a more integrated solution? Because I know if we look around some of the facilities we've seen, that's the solution I've seen being used. Jeff, Tom, do you want to?
Yeah, I can address that. When we look at controlling the complete, let's say, the line process, screen printing was fundamentally the next thing that we needed in our line in order to control the process. We're moving forward with looking at the ability to provide some closed loop feedback from the printer to the placement process. You're already able to control things like stencil offset and based on what the SBI is seeing, and cleaning the stencil, how often that gets done as well. It just opens up a lot of opportunities for as these components and assemblies, especially in wearables, get smaller and smaller. To be able to control the process dynamically is really very, very important, and we're going to see more and more of that going forward in the future.
Yeah, and that's happening in a whole bunch of industries. What I was interested in, Joan, is when we look at the wearables sector, it feels like it's a collision of electronics and it's a collision of apparel, and now it's even a collision of fashion as well. Is there anything that we as the electronics manufacturers can learn from those other industries in how to, not just how to build stuff, but how to fulfill it out into the marketplace?
I like the fact that it's going to fashion, for sure. But I think one of the key things that both sides are going to learn. When you look at what we're trying to do with a wearable device, electronic device, anybody that's been working in electronics for a long time, you really can't throw this in water. It always has some sort of moisture challenges once in a while. But now when you get this in apparel, people like to wear their clothes, and they maybe are running in those clothes, and you certainly want them to take a shower and clean those clothes. So, how do we balance out the electronic side with the apparel side? And I think some of the things that we're also seeing is when you start getting into the apparel, to the point we were making before, is that normally we're used to handling something that's fairly flat, and we do the assembly attach on this. But now you're starting to get into the fabrics, and these fabrics, you have to look at the fabric itself and the weave of the fabric, and how do you put down the line that you want for the electronics, how do you encase it, and then once you have this fabric, how do you bring it together into a shirt? And looking at even buttons as a potential interconnect to have it talk to bring your shirt together and have a full continuous loop of electronics. So there's a lot of balancing that has to happen in the apparel market with the electronics. We're both learning from this. There's a lot of activity in this area, which I find very exciting because it brings it to a different media that we hadn't had a deal before. You know, and I'm a technology geek kid, so I like doing those kind of things. But yeah, it's certainly, that's going to be a fascinating area going forward.
And certainly those processes are going to challenge you guys as well. One of the things I wanted you to do, Joan, was just kind of think about the ideal scenario from an equipment supplier's point of view. What do you, when you're looking into a new technology, what are you asking your equipment suppliers to do in terms of getting involved in this process, and what can they bring to the party to make sure you can enable the product for your customers?
I think one of the key things, I've been in this market for a while, I think one of the key successes has been in the semiconductor market as well as in the printed circuit market, where we do road mapping. And in road mapping, you know, we kind of see we anticipate what the future can be. And what that does is it basically trickles down. I know this is going to be on my wrist. What do I need to worry about? How do I need to move this? And then, you know, what are the pitches going to be? What kind of components am I going to have? What's the height going to be? And so we can get on top of that from understanding through road mapping to kind of put the vision of this is what I need, and then I can go to the equipment side and say, this is what I'm thinking, and then their collective intelligence says, well, this is how we translate it into our equipment. And road mapping, I think, is going to be very key in the wearable market, having the success that it's going to need, because there's a lot of things out there, but you know, if you look at the overall vision of it, you need to know where it's going to go, because we can currently leverage what we've been learning in the cell phone market, where things were getting miniaturized. But now you have to look at even how do you power this, and you can't. That power connection is really key, and also recharging in place. You have the topology challenges. So there's a lot of things that I think, if you just look as what we want to do in the wearables going forward, and road mapping out what are the key features, and then working very closely with the equipment side of the business, we can really get in advance of this like we want to do going forward.
Yeah, and we need to be really agile and really fast on that, I guess. And from your point of view, Jeff, if you look at that, to respond to that, what do you do as an organization to engage in those roadmaps? How do you get involved in those roadmaps and make sure that you've got the product that is going to resolve that challenge?
Well, we start right here in this forum. So hopefully the message gets out to everybody that, you know, we're here as ASM, printing, placement together. And so, yeah, the message starts here. Obviously, strategically, we position ourselves to go to the market, present technical conferences, educate ourselves by connecting with people that are already doing that. So, you know, we are working behind the scenes, and we're also publicly visible in forums such as this, trying to get the message out.
Yeah. And Tom, you have technology scouts out in the marketplace that are looking at new technologies, and sometimes it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be a groundbreaking technology that you have to try to resolve these issues.
Yeah, that's right, Phil. As far as road mapping goes and finding out what our customers' needs are, we involve our customers in our roadmap discussions. We get a lot of our ideas for product features and capabilities from these discussions we have with our core customers. Take, for example, the I mentioned it earlier, when you're placing small parts, it's critical from the pick all the way to the placement to be able to know exactly where this component is at all times. Some of the functionality we got out of our machines came from roadmap discussions with customers, like being able to pick a component without actually having the nozzle physically touch the component in the tape pocket. The nozzle for 0201s, 01005, 03015, the nozzle has to stop prior to the surface of the component, switch vacuum on, and you get a much better reliability as far as the pick reliability goes. Absence or presence sensors on the heads themselves. The nozzle with some of these parts, the vacuum flow is so minimal that you can't measure it. So the only way to know really if the part's been picked or not is that the nozzle passes through a laser absence presence sensor, and that process is repeated at the placement. So, you know, all of these features we have actually developed over a number of years, and they just basically fold right into what's necessary, in many cases anyways, what's necessary for the wearables market as well. So, yeah.
So it's a two-way communication, isn't it? It's really you sharing with these guys what you think your customers are going to be wanting, and these guys sharing some of the technologies that are going to enable you to maybe deliver that in a different way or come up with different solutions. The couple of events I've been to recently in the wearables arena, I've been totally blown away by the diversity of products that people are bringing to the market in wearables. So many different solutions. I just want to ask you all individually, and this is more as a consumer than as an expert, what do you think are the technologies that are going to become part of our everyday lives? What do you think is going to make its way through? Maybe we can start with you, Joan.
Well, I mean, for me, I see that there's going to be a blend between probably the fashion and the wearable electronics. I think that's going to be someplace that I hope gets accelerated a little bit more. But from an enabling technology, I think power is going to be one of the biggest challenges. How do we power this and then recharge? That is definitely going to be a challenging area, and I see a lot of activity going on in that space, which I'm very encouraged about. And then the other side is I'm not really much into the fashion and the clothing as is, like I said, in the jewelry side. And using the phone is your hub. Let's face it, a phone is a hub now. And so anything that you're wearing is going to attach to that phone. And for me, it's that constant connection, and how do I get that information back to myself in a way I can use it. And I think those are probably the two key things that I see from an enabling point that are going to happen. But anybody out there doing wearables, make it look good. You have somebody that'll buy it. But
I think that's an important part of the market, and what you mentioned about data is important. That plays into that whole Internet of Things debate and the intelligence of things, all those kind of things. Tom, what wearable are you going to buy?
Well, that's a good question. I enjoy golf, so one thing that comes to mind is that these fitness bands, have some technology, work with software where when you take a swing, that it actually can measure your velocity and your swing arc, and can be a kind of a learning tool that you can use rather than paying a lot of money, having to go to a you're
going to put your golf coach out of work?
Tour. What, sir?
You're going to put your golf coach out of work?
I mean, no. I need more work, I think, than just a fitness kind of band could give me. But there's other things. I had some sleep-related issues for a while, and apnea-related, and I know now they're medical side of things. They're coming out with devices that you can actually lay across your mattress. It measures your body position. You can your breathing cadence, your regular, and all of this can be then wirelessly hooked into the sleep clinic. So you can kind of see where sleep clinics are very expensive. They got limited beds and that sort of thing. If you can do this at home and they can just look at the data, doctors can look at the data there and analyze, then you get more nights of data as well. You could just 3 or 4 nights in a row rather than one night in a sleep clinic. They're trying to capture the essence of what your problem is. It's very difficult in one night. So that's another thing I think that you'll see in the future as well.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, so the fashion part of it really doesn't appeal too much to me personally. So I'm more of a functional, it's got to be cool, it's got to work, got to do something, give me some value. Appearance, not so much. I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of coaching kids in their sports and what types of things can you do to help them improve. I mean, we know that youth sports is extremely competitive these days. They need to start earlier and earlier, and I'm probably behind the ball with my 6-year-old boy. He's not involved in some of these things yet, and I'm probably too late. But maybe with the help of some wearables, then we can develop better techniques more quickly. And me not being the best of coaches, maybe those devices can help me really achieve some success there. So I see that as a coach, you can find some unique aspect of using a wearable to improve
I think that sports coaching is really interesting. And one of the things that I read a few pieces on recently was the German football team, soccer team as they would call it here, that won the World Cup, were using wearable devices in their coaching to track the distances that people were running and to make decisions about when they were making substitutions. So we're seeing that stuff play more and more an active role in our lives. Doubtless, we're going to see wearables everywhere. It's an exciting, growing market. Great to see everybody being involved in that market and actually leveraging the integration of DEC and C-Place to be able to take a much more holistic approach and support Joan and the efforts that companies like Flextronics are making in that area. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for taking part today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you next time. 3:30, we're going to be talking about the manufacturing industry in Mexico. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you.